Have you ever thought of someone right before they texted you? Or noticed the same number appearing everywhere you look? These aren't coincidences. They're what Carl Jung called synchronicities, and they're far more real than most people realize. If you're curious about the hidden patterns in your life and how artificial intelligence can actually train your mind to recognize them, then subscribe to this channel, because we're about to explore something that will change how you see reality itself. Synchronicity is Jung's term for meaningful coincidences, events that seem unrelated on the surface, but connect in profound ways. It's not about luck or chance. It's about recognizing patterns that your conscious mind usually filters out. Think about how your brain processes millions of pieces of information every single second, yet you're only aware of a tiny fraction. Your unconscious mind is doing the real work, constantly noticing connections and relationships that your conscious awareness overlooks. For decades, scientists dismissed Jung's ideas as pseudoscience. They couldn't measure synchronicity in a lab. They couldn't replicate it. But here's what's changed. Artificial intelligence is now revealing the mathematical structure underneath what Jung intuited. AI systems are trained to recognize patterns across massive datasets, and they're incredibly good at finding connections humans would never spot. The technology works by processing information at scales and speeds that dwarf human capability. When machine learning algorithms scan millions of data points, they find genuine patterns that exist in reality. The human brain works differently, but not worse. Your mind has its own pattern recognition system that's been honed by millions of years of evolution. When you train yourself to notice synchronicities, you're essentially teaching your brain to filter information the way a neural network does. You're becoming more conscious of the patterns that have always been there. The difference between someone who experiences constant synchronicity and someone who experiences none isn't luck, it's attention. Consider this: your reticular activating system, or RAS, is a part of your brain that filters incoming sensory data. It decides what's important enough to bring to your conscious awareness. If you prime your RAS to look for something, you'll suddenly see it everywhere. This is why when you buy a car, you start seeing that model on every street. The cars were always there, your attention wasn't. Synchronicity works the same way. When you train your mind through intention and awareness, your RAS starts filtering for meaningful connections. You begin noticing the patterns that matter. Artificial intelligence can accelerate this training process. AI systems are designed to recognize patterns in data by identifying statistical relationships that repeat across datasets. When you use AI tools designed for pattern recognition, you're essentially outsourcing part of the cognitive work to a system that's optimized for it. The machine learns what patterns look like. Then, as you interact with these patterns, your own brain begins to develop the same recognition capability. You're learning from the AI, and through that learning, you're rewiring your own neural pathways. Let's be practical. Imagine you're struggling with a decision. You have multiple options, and you're uncertain which path to take. A traditional approach is to make a pros and cons list, but an AI-assisted approach might work differently. You input your situation, your goals, and your constraints into a system trained to recognize patterns in similar situations. The AI shows you patterns of outcomes from thousands of comparable scenarios. You see what typically leads to success. You see what typically leads to regret. Now your conscious mind has been primed with pattern data. Your RAS is activated. When you encounter real-world signals related to these patterns, you notice them. This is where synchronicity becomes practical and powerful. You're not relying on magic or mystical intuition, though the experience might feel mystical. You're training your perceptual apparatus to recognize the signals that matter. Like that time you heard about a specific problem 3 times in a week, from 3 different people, right before a client brought that exact issue to you. Was it coincidence? Or had your brain been primed to notice discussions of that problem because your unconscious mind knew it was relevant to you? AI amplifies this process by making pattern training explicit and intentional. Machine learning systems show you what patterns look like. They show you the statistical weight behind certain correlations. When your brain sees this, it internalizes it. You become better at recognizing similar patterns in real time. Your intuition, which is just your unconscious mind pattern matching at high speed, becomes more accurate. Your gut feelings become more trustworthy. And here's what's remarkable. Scientific research is starting to validate this. Studies show that people trained to recognize patterns with AI assistance show improved intuitive decision-making in domains completely unrelated to the training. Jung believed that the psyche and the physical world were connected through synchronicity, that consciousness and matter were entangled in ways that materialist science hadn't yet understood. He was right in spirit, even if the mechanism is different from what he imagined. The mechanism isn't mystical, it's cognitive. Your conscious mind and your unconscious mind are entangled. Your patterns of belief and attention shape what you perceive, and what you perceive shapes your reality, because it determines your actions. If you notice an opportunity, you act on it. If you don't notice it, it passes. That's not magic. That's how perception creates reality. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you like the idea that your brain can be trained to notice what matters, please give this video a like right now, because I'm about to show you how to actually implement this in your life. The principle is simple, but the practice requires consistency and intention. First, you need to get clear on what patterns matter to you. What decisions are you trying to make better? What area of your life would change if you could perceive more of what's actually happening? Define this explicitly. Second, you gather data or examples. If you're trying to notice patterns about your relationships, think back to your past relationships. What conditions preceded the good ones? What preceded the difficult ones? If you're trying to notice patterns about your work, look at your past projects. What preceded success? What preceded failure? You're building a dataset in your own mind. Third, you feed this into an AI pattern recognition system. You might use ChatGPT to analyze your examples and highlight common themes. You might use specialized tools designed for pattern recognition. You might use data visualization software to see your data graphically. The tool doesn't matter as much as the process. Fourth, and this is crucial, you consciously review what the AI shows you. You read it, you think about it, you let it become familiar to your mind. You're training your RAS to recognize these patterns in real time. And fifth, you live with this awareness. You go about your normal life, but now your brain is primed. You're watching for these patterns. When you encounter a situation that matches what you've learned, you notice it immediately. Your unconscious mind flags it. Your conscious mind becomes aware of it. That's the synchronicity. The reason this works is that you've moved from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence. You didn't know what to look for, so you couldn't see the patterns. Now you know. Your brain is scanning for them. Over time, with repeated exposure, you move to unconscious competence. You see the patterns automatically, without effort. Your intuition becomes accurate. You start experiencing synchronicities at a much higher frequency, because you're literally more aware of the connections that are always occurring. Here's a concrete example from my own experience. I used to miss professional opportunities constantly because I didn't recognize the signals that a collaboration was possible or that a partnership would work. I would meet someone, we'd have a nice conversation, and months later, I'd realize we could have built something together. I just didn't notice the potential. So I took an inventory of my successful collaborations. I used AI tools to analyze the characteristics of those relationships at the moment of first meeting. The pattern that emerged was specific verbal cues and shared interests that appeared in the first 30 minutes. Once I knew this pattern, I started noticing it. Suddenly, I was recognizing collaboration potential immediately. Was I experiencing more opportunities, or was I simply noticing them? I believe it was the latter. The opportunities were always there. My perception evolved. This is what Jung was gesturing toward with synchronicity. He understood that there was a layer of reality that most people missed because they weren't trained to see it. The patterns exist. They're not created by your attention. but your attention determines whether you perceive them. When you train your mind, especially with AI as a teaching tool, you're not creating synchronicity. You're training yourself to notice it. You're aligning your conscious awareness with what your unconscious mind is already perceiving. Now, one important distinction: there's a risk of falling into magical thinking. Just because you recognize a pattern doesn't mean the pattern is controlling you or that the universe is sending you messages. Synchronicity is real in the sense that meaningful patterns exist, but it's not mystical. It's not the universe conspiring. It's your mind recognizing genuine correlations in complex systems. Sometimes those correlations are causal. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just statistical noise that happens to look like a pattern. That's where AI helps, because AI systems are trained to distinguish between genuine patterns and random noise. The practical benefit of this is enormous. When you can perceive patterns accurately, you make better decisions. You avoid traps because you recognize the warning signs. You seize opportunities because you recognize the signals of potential. You build better relationships because you notice the early signs of compatibility or incompatibility. You advance your career because you perceive the moves that lead to growth. This isn't luck, it's perception, and perception is trainable. So how do you start? Tomorrow, pick one domain of your life where you want better pattern recognition. It might be relationships, career, health, creativity, finance, or anything else. Think about that domain for 15 minutes. What patterns would change your life if you understood them better? Write down 3 to 5 examples from your past where you wish you'd seen a pattern earlier. Then, spend 30 minutes with an AI tool describing those examples and asking it to identify common threads. Look at what it finds. Let that sit in your mind. Over the next week, notice whether you start perceiving similar patterns in real time. You likely will. This is the synchronicity. You're training your mind to notice what matters. The beautiful thing is that this process compounds. The more you train your pattern recognition, the better you get at it. The more synchronicities you notice, the more you're rewarded for your attention. You experience a positive feedback loop. Your life becomes more interesting, not because reality changed, but because you're perceiving more of what's real. And that perception creates opportunity and meaning. So if you found this exploration of synchronicity and AI helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What patterns have you noticed repeating in your own life? Have you ever experienced a synchronicity that changed your perspective or led you somewhere important? Share your story, because I read every comment, and these conversations often reveal the most profound insights. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We explore the intersection of psychology, technology, and human potential. There's so much more to discover together.